Men who were sexually harassed, assaulted, raped or forced to have sex by females.
What happened?
Woke up in the middle of the night with her going to town. Had me very worried about her mental state, since she was claiming rape 3 days before. Just seemed to further cement that this was all a game, and my emotions or consent meaningless. Claiming false rape and then raping. Sounds like a real keeper. I had a colorful sexual adventure with a particularly deviant and somewhat mentally unstable chick for a time, and she kept wanting me to act out a consensual/non-consent roleplay where I would storm into her house and play the part of a forceful stranger. I would like to think that I'm not a very vanilla guy, but I emphatically refused every time she brought it up and stand by my decision to this day. The last thing I need is to spend most of my adult life striving to respect the body and mind of any sexual partner I have, and it all go to shit because some girl grifted me into becoming a rapist, which is a moldy jacket you can never take off. I don't know if she would have even done that, but I try to trust my instincts and something inside me was cautioning against it. I'm disabled, and a friend decided to do me a favor by sexually assaulting me while I couldn't move, in a room where a bunch of my friends were sleeping. We were all crashing over at a friend's place. I tried to push her away but she insisted on it, and I questioned myself, thinking maybe I should be enjoying this? But I don't. I felt gross and pathetic, because she saw me as a charity case. And I felt so low for months afterwards. I was in college. It was a girl I'd repeatedly turned down for about 6 months. I came out of a blackout to her on top of me, holding me down and riding me. She had about 5 inches and 20 pounds on me, volleyball player. After a few minutes of confusion, trying to figure out what was going on, I tried to push her off, which she thought was a game I guess, and pinned me down to the bed by my throat. It wasn't great. I can relate in a way except I didn't wake up. I was passed out and a couple of friends had pulled my pants down and had their fun. And made videos too and spread it among our social circle. Most people thought it was funny. Honestly, I remember feeling pretty pissed off and violated, and not gonna lie, I never really considered this to be rape until a year or so later. Till then, in my mind, it was just those two being bitches. It was a manager of mine. She grabbed my crotch while she was yelling at me in her office. When I backed away, she laughed and said, "Tell on me. No one will believe it." I was shocked. The way she said it was like it was written in a TV show. It was so on the nose that I was more focused on that at first than the fact that I technically got sexually harassed/assaulted at work. We were part of the HR department, too. It was awful. Thank you for asking this question. Too many women in my life have told me that it wasn't a big deal because she's a woman and I'm a man, etc., 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 you know. The usual societal norms BS. I was forced into a corner and overpowered by a girl much wider and heavier than me. She groped me for a solid 20-something minutes, forced me to finger her, and there was no one else in the house. Screwed me up for life. I didn't say anything because who was gonna frickin' believe me? Edit, thank you for the support. You are all appreciated. It wasn't sexual assault, and it was my friend's brother, but the story goes. He was having a conversation with a woman out in public, on the sidewalk, and she attacked him. He had to push her away and she fell down. Cops were called and they spoke with witnesses, then came over to him. He thought he was going to be arrested, but the cops asked him if he wanted to press charges. The witnesses had been honest about what they had seen, and he was not being treated as the bully. So, there is reason to hope that society is waking up to the fact that it's not just men doing the attacking, and not just women being attacked. I was literally a kid, about 7 to 9, and got harassed by some girls. Some of them were a bit older, not even teens, some of them were my age. I was at a birthday party, went to the bathroom which had no locking system, but the door was hard enough to open. I managed to open it anyway. While I was in there, a group of 5 girls or so entered, and while one of them forced the door to be closed, the rest started making me feel uncomfortable, taking pictures with digital cameras and some of them touching me. I don't remember more details, but it was a really traumatic experience, and I have to hear the men can't be raped almost every week. I haven't told this to almost anyone, not even my family. And I know, it's not as hard as other situations, but I was a kid and lost my innocence with those girls. Knew a girl in high school who had a reputation for hunting for drunk/passed out guys at parties. Every guy knew, none of us actually liked her. When she showed up to a party, everyone knew what she was up to. Usually 1/3 of the guys there would quietly leave unannounced. She awkwardly hit on anything with a third leg, fail miserably. Then when the party would die down, she'd start trying to get into rooms that was occupied. Once that failed, she'd move on to finding someone who passed out somewhere out of view, and yep, she'd go to town. She got one of my friends one night. He said it felt like frickin' sandpaper before he threw her off him. The freaky thing was all of the girls knew this, and had absolutely no problem with it at all. They'd even joke about it. My girlfriend told me that they'd place bets, but they'd always keep an eye out for their boyfriends. My experiences of this came when I was working as a care worker. I was one of only 2 guys to work there and the other was a manager in their mid-50s. I was 18 when I started and lasted 2 years. It's funny seeing how it all kind of escalated in hindsight. Like it started as jokes and inappropriate comments from both staff and residents that I just laughed along with, look at our sexy new guy around, he can help me get into bed, etc., and then ended up with both staff and residents touching me, grabbing my ass mostly, but the worst was one grabbed my balls, and I mean grabbed. It hurt and was so unexpected and everyone else in the room just laughed. It all came to a head when someone put a complaint in. I think it was a resident's family member who overheard them, but we were never told who, and we had a special training course about workplace harassment, but even on the training day it wasn't taken very seriously. It was seen as something men can't be affected by. I've worked in hospitality for about 7 years now. Started as a valet/courtesy shuttle driver and worked the overnight desk. It has happened quite a few times. Too many to recount all the instances. Most were either drunk bachelorette parties who would get a little handsy while I was dropping them off downtown, or older women in their 40s to 50s looking for a thrill. I remember one encounter when the bride-to-be herself was in the seat up front on the passenger side, the shuttle van full of her bridesmaids and friends. She asked me if I've ever made out with a drunk bachelorette before. I say no, and nothing else, not really wanting to continue that line of conversation. She then, rather aggressively, reaches over and grabs my crotch and squeezes. It hurt and told her to get her hand off me. The whole group started yelling, saying that I should be fine with it, she's just having fun, etc. I say no thank you, I'm happily married. They continue to egg the bride on as she keeps grabbing and squeezing. It was painful and humiliating. Another instance that I remember clearly happened after I moved to the overnight front desk at a different hotel in the same vicinity. A drunk older lady comes in and rummages through the snack market while I'm restocking it, and out of nowhere says something along the lines of, "I think I want this as my snack," reaching out and grabbing my butt. When I shake her off, she goes for the crotch. Thankfully her friend sees her and drags her away, apologizing as much as she can, but nothing really lessens the sting of humiliation at being violated like that. When I was younger there was a woman who lived in my area that I had always known but never spoken to given the age difference. I can't really remember the specifics of how it happened, but one day she invited my friend and I in for a drink and we accepted, thinking it would be quite cool to drink with this woman and her friend. Anyway, a few hours later we were drunk and she told me she wanted to show me something upstairs, which was obviously bullshit, but being 15 and drunk went along. Anyway, long story short, she pushed me down onto the bed and started stripping my trousers off, saying crazy stuff like she had wanted this for years and stuff. Hearing the commotion, her friend came up the stairs and started saying stuff like, "Oh, don't worry, you'll enjoy it and it will be fun," all the while the other woman down the other side. Anyway, despite my protests, she jumped on top and had herself some fun. I can look back and laugh at this because it happened to me and it wasn't like I was traumatized or anything, but I sometimes think if a woman in her mid-30s done this to my 15-year-old son, I would kill them. Almost a 3-year relationship that was abusive from the start. My girlfriend at the time didn't care about anyone but herself in most scenarios. And the nights that I didn't want to have sex for whatever reason, working a 12-hour day or my depression getting in the way, she would force me into it, getting on top of me and forcing her way till she got what she wanted. She wasn't the nicest. She would go out her way to make me feel like a piece of shit even when she got what she wanted out of me. People always ask, why didn't you stop her? You're bigger than she is. In my scenario and many other scenarios that I've heard in support groups, she threatened rape allegations and I wasn't in a headspace to deal with that, so I took the abuse for 3 years to not worry about things like that being held against me. I'm not angry anymore. I hope she's doing well for herself, and I hope the next guy she's with isn't a pushover like me. Guys out there, if you see/hear this happening to another guy, speak up. Especially if you're in a position of power. I overheard a couple women in the office, 40s/50s, making some crude comments about a visitor we had within earshot of him. Explicit comments about his body and such. I called them out on the hypocrisy, because there's no way they'd let me do that about a girl. I don't think they even once considered it was the same until I said something. We had a long chat about it, and they apologized.